All right. We are live.
Okay, we're good to go. All right, we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the March 7th meeting of the Environment Subcommittee. I've reordered the agenda a little bit, so we're going to discuss bills in the following order: House Bill 621, House Bill 714, House Bill 834, House Bill 653, and time permitting, House Bill 700. And speaking of time, I think we'll knock off no later than 5:30. Of course, we have floor session at 6. So hopefully we can get through at least discussion. Well, hopefully we can get through those 4 bills. Okay, with that, let's go to House Bill 621, Delegate Grammer's bill. And Kristen, we have both sponsor and MDE amendments. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Can you go over what they do and how they differ?
Sure. And I did, I sent out a chart, a side-by-side, just to show the difference. So the bill has a couple components. There's a monitoring requirement, and Delegate Grammer's amendments would make the bill's monitoring requirement applied to plants that are permitted to process at least 80 million gallons of effluent daily. MDE changes this application to apply to plants with a discharge permit, with a discharge permit greater than 80 million gallons per day. The bill requires that an evaluation of effluent evaluate that impact on midge populations. Neither Delegate Grammer's amendments or MD amendments change that part of the bill. That evaluation would still need to be conducted by MDE. Both sets of amendments strike the inspection requirements under the bill. So on page 2, lines 1 through 20 would be taken out of the bill. Delegate Grammer's amendment includes a new evaluation requirement. It would require MDE to evaluate the plants for compliance with relevant permit and reporting requirements in the process of monitoring effluent discharges under the bill.
So that, Kristen, sorry to interrupt, but that would apply only to those plants that generate 80 million gallons of effluent daily. Is that right? That's correct. The eval requirement. Okay.
Yep. And so then there's a reporting requirement that came in the bill. Delegate Grammer's amendments would change the record. It's a twice a year reporting requirement. A bill is introduced at that reporting requirement in 2023, and Delegate Grammer's amendment changes that to 2022. MDE's amendments are different. They changed this reporting requirement to be a one-time reporting requirement that would be due October 1st, 2023.
And then never again.
For MDE's version, correct. Delegate Grammer's is ongoing twice a year. MDE's amendments are a one-time report.
And because Delegate Grammer sent me some information as well, so I'm trying to work through it. So Delegate Grammer's two times inspection would be until the problem is mitigated, or it's just ongoing for a kind of an
So this is an ongoing requirement with respect to the impact of the effluent on midge populations.
And so
it would only apply to it would only apply to certain plants, depending on which set of amendments you're looking at, but both of them restrict it to a certain plant, trying to get at backwater and Patapsco.
Right.
So,
well, go ahead, Delegate Ruth.
yeah, thank you so much. A couple of questions. The monitoring requirement seems to be saying the same thing, but in a different way. They both seem to be 80 million gallons per day, but it seems like it's worded differently. Is that?
Yeah. So the way I look at it, the Delegate Grammer's version is that they're permitted to process at least 80 million gallons. maybe they don't actually discharge that. And maybe MDE's amendments are a little more precise, targeting facilities that actually discharge, or their discharge permit. It might be, a matter of just the way the permit is drafted. So actually, it may be better to see what Tyler's thoughts are on this, because I'm not sure if it's really just a matter of saying the same thing, but a little bit differently.
Yeah, I would say that it's the same thing, but slightly different. They're both trying to do the same thing.
And I think, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to say that if we want to talk more, I know that that's a technical change. I have the same desire as the delegate of what to address here. And so if that's a technical change, I can work out with Chris, and I'm happy to make sure we have official language.
So it's really just a language difference, we think, essentially. Okay.
I wasn't trying to do anything different than he was.
No, I mean, I just reading it, it seemed like it was the same. And how many plants would that be?
That'd be 2 as of right now.
Okay. And then do we know, so for the part that Delegate Grammer has, evaluating the plants for compliance with relevant permit and reporting requirements, is there an additional cost for that? Do we know?
So we would be okay adding that language in as long as we can, hold these requirements to, I guess, that 1 year, the one report. And so, if you wouldn't mind, I can explain why we are trying to look for just one report.
Sure.
And so,
Yeah, please do.
the monitoring of the midge population and phytoplankton isn't a task that MDE currently does. And so we will, be hiring additional employees or a contractor to carry out that work. And so we want this to be a 1-year study to see if there are impacts, if there's material difference. MDA is also doing their pesticide spreading, and they will have to be reporting by the end of the year as well. And so having these 2 new reports, not in this bill, sorry, I see you looking now. So just in general. And so with our new information and MDA's information, I feel like we can come back once we have all this information and then have a, better sense of how to move forward, rather than just us requiring this in perpetuity right now, and we'd have to come back and get a legislative change if we determined that there wasn't, an impact.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Delegate Boyce?
Thank you so much. So Tyler, but then how does that handle, so if I'm hearing you correctly, MDA currently monitors this to a degree?
So MDE, we, regulate the facility, and then MDA is pesticide management.
Got it.
And so MDA is working with the county to fund a grant to do spraying for the midges going into this season to see how that will affect the population. And so that was something that we worked out September of last year with the county.
Yeah, so I certainly understand what you just mentioned. I just don't understand, if it's an ongoing problem, why wouldn't you want ongoing reporting to know whether or not are we, managing the problem well? Do we need to make alterations? Because what I'm hearing is that you want to kind of do a study, and then based on the study, want to move forward. But then how do we know what we're doing, if we're doing what we've said may work? How do we know that it's being done well?
Yeah, I understand. So last year, I believe, was the worst year for the midge population, and previous years were not reported to be as bad. And so there is some issue that occurred last year, which is why we're trying to, move forward with solving that issue. Because there are additional efforts within the bill in order to create this report, that's why we're looking for the one-time reporting requirement. And the timing of the report, we think, allows for enough time for legislation to be crafted if needed moving forward for the 2024 session.
So we would potentially accept this with the expectation that maybe the sponsor would come back and then add the reporting based on this one report.
I would say if there was a correlation that was found, scientifically between the effluent and midge population, then that, could lead to future legislation on how to address that, or it could lead to permitting changes at MDE if we found that, scientifically there were issues. And so I think there's just a lot of unknowns. And if the report, I think on our side, it's if the report says that there isn't a correlation, then we have to come back and get legislation to stop it. So it's,
And you don't believe there's any way that we can add wording now that could speak to either or outcome?
I do not know. We can talk about it. Happy to talk about it.
Well, how about this? Let's hold the bill for now. And also the sponsor had emailed this afternoon asking if he could join the subcommittee call. I explained our policy is if you're not on the subcommittee, legislators can't join. So then he did email me and Delegate Boyce some lengthy comments. So we really should get those out to everyone as well. And I haven't had a chance to review them.
Mr. Chair, is it fair to move the amendments that we have agreed on and leave the other ones open that we still have questions about?
Sure, that's fair.
Is there a place where there is agreed? Because, for example, the application of the monitoring requirement, there's MDE's technical change, and then there's delegate grammars. I'm not sure if they're I would defer to personally MDE's expertise and how that provision is drafted, but I'm not sure if anybody has a problem with changing what delegate grammar proposed. And then the reporting requirements they're in a different posture. So I'm not sure if there is a place where you could adopt one amendment without considering the others.
Understood.
Okay, so Delegate Boyce, you okay if we
hold it? Yeah, absolutely.
Completely. Okay. Delegate Ruth, did you have an additional question?
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, not a question, but just, for consideration as we go forward towards next week, that I understand MDE's concern about not wanting to have to legislate to take this back out again. I would like to see, if it's not a burden, this language about the evaluation requirement added in. So it seems like maybe some kind of merging of these would be appropriate.
So, okay, Tower, could I ask that you work with Delegates Boyce and Ruth and the sponsor to come up with potential compromise language on the reporting requirements? And I guess with respect to the evaluation requirements, that remind me, Tower, did you say you were okay with that or preferred not to have that in?
So we would be okay if that was tied to the reporting requirement,
right?
Because if, again, we follow, federal laws and guidance on how often a inspection should occur, and this has the potential to change that frequency. But I think everybody knows that right now we are on site quite a bit, and so we are conducting frequent inspections right now.
Right. Okay. All right. So we'll hold this. That's House Bill 621, House Bill 714. Sponsor is yours truly. I think, Kristen, remind me, has this been on an agenda so that we've already explained the bill?
I don't think we've gotten to it yet.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll give a brief summary. So
I might be I don't have my notes from the last agenda, truthfully. So
that's fine. I can give a quick overview of it. So this really stems from the Valley protein controversy from the past year and a half. So the idea is that what this bill says is under the Bay Restoration Fund, a privately owned wastewater facility can only apply for funding for upgrades under the BRF if it services two or more households. And also there's a proviso that says that even with that definition, if there's any facility that has been in non-compliance with its permit, it can only still seek funding if certain other conditions are met, including financial hardship, that it's not a subsidiary of another company. And I think there's one other criteria in there. Yeah, so that's sort of a summary of the bill. Kristen, did anyone submit any amendments for
I have
714?
not received any amendments on this bill.
Okay. Any questions about what House Bill 714 does? Delegate Gilchrist?
Yeah, how do we fund the Bay Restoration Fund?
Flush tax, as it's colloquially known.
That's the one we instituted around '06 and then we doubled about 10 years later.
I think that's right. It might have actually started a little bit earlier than 06.
Before, I think.
Yeah.
Before, yeah, that sounds
And
right.
maybe 2012, it was raised.
And it's on both wastewater and septic systems, the fee?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you.
Okay.
So
We
are
can,
can I move the bill?
sure. I would not object.
I'll
Second.
second it.
Okay. All right. Any further questions about this bill? Again, no amendments. All right. All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. I think I heard a majority there. So, all right. Thank you. House Bill 834, Delegate Love's bill. Speaking of septics, Kristen, I know this one is new, so could you explain what this bill does?
Sure. The bill requires MDE to establish the third week in September as Septic Smart Week. And during that week, the department must share educational materials provided by EPA relating to its Septic Smart initiative. There's also provisions impacting the sale of real property. The sponsor submitted amendments to this section. So this would require, as amended, it would require a contract for the sale of residential real property to include notification of the availability of the septic systems outreach toolkit through the EPA website. There's provision that requires the contract to be initialed by the purchaser, but failure of a vendor to include the provision or the purchaser to initial would not void the contract. This language is very similar. I don't know if the bill came through our subcommittee or housing, but there was a bill relating to Montgomery County with these provisions that the committee passed. I think it was 2000, it was actually 2020, House Bill 562. So I did check with the realtors on this updated language and they were fine with it.
We move the amendments.
Second.
Any questions about the amendments? All right, all those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we have the bill as amended.
Move the bill.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor of the bill as amended, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you. Bill as amended passes. Okay, on to Conservation Finance Act. I want to thank everyone who's participated in, the several discussions the subcommittee's had and contributed amendments. So our goal today is to review the amendments, decide which ones we want to adopt. So Kristen, I know you sent out a compilation summary of the proposed amendments. Do you want me to try to pull that up? And then also, I guess Delegate Vaughn had one that you sent out separately. So maybe you can pull that up after we discuss the ones that you have in the summary document.
That works fine.
Okay, well, give me 1 second to pull up that summary. Okay, can everyone see the document? Okay. All right. So Kristen, why don't you, so I guess what we'll do is we'll go through these amendments sort of set by set, starting with the sponsor amendments. And we'll, if anyone has any questions about them, that's when we'll take any questions about the amendments. Again, we'll go through them sequentially, and then we'll, we'll ask for anyone who wants to move particular amendments to do so. So, Kristen and Delegate Boyce, you want to start with the sponsor amendments?
Sure, I guess I'll start, and if there's questions that Delegate Boyce wants to elaborate, that works for me. So the sponsor amendments, and these came, I think, in from, I think Delegate Love might have submitted them, but so the first amendment relates to the authority for MES to utilize pay for success contracting. I think it's a technical amendment. It's adding the portion of law that relates to MES and its procurement methods, because the MES is generally exempt from the area of the procurement law in the bill. And so we're just bringing in that statute to add that MES may use these pay for success contracting as one of their procurement methods. So it's just aligning their MES statute with what's being proposed in the bill. And so the amendment has been sent out too, if you wanted to actually look at it. It's just really just adds to the list of procurement methods. It would add pay for success contracting.
Delegate Ruth, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So does this, when you say it exempts them from the area of state procurement law, would there be other sections of this bill then that they would be exempt from?
So there's the provisions of the procurement law that's included in this bill under existing law exempt MES. The bill is being amended to add MES to utilize these pay for success contracting, but it's inconsistent by adding MES to a portion of the law, existing law, that they're already exempt from. So what the language in the MES, the new language that'd be added to the MES statute just cross-references the new language under the procurement law. So there wouldn't, it's all cross-references and it would be fine. It doesn't exempt anything further.
So, right. So the procurement section, like towards the last part of the bill where it describes what a pay for success contract looks like, that would still apply to them.
That would be applied. In fact, that section of the bill is being cross-referenced in this amendment language.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions about this amendment? Okay, number 2.
So the second amendment relates to the task force on state and local government accounting for natural capital. The amendment is intended to ensure diversity of the membership on the task force, and the language is either identical or very similar to language in the bill that relates to the membership of the Green and Blue Infrastructure Policy Advisory Commission.
Okay. Any questions about this amendment? Okay, why don't we move on? NIA proposals. I guess there are 3 separate amendments. Kristen, if you could explain them.
So the amendment, I just used NIAP's explanation that the first amendment is intended to clarify that landowners participating in greenhouse gas markets is consistent with the state greenhouse gas reduction goals. And this is for participation under the agriculture, the cost share, the Maryland Ag Cost Share Program, I believe. I might get to the right page of the bill.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and so right now there's language in the bill that requires consistency with the state's Chesapeake Bay conservation goals, and NAIOP wanted to add language that these would be consistent with the state's greenhouse gas reduction goals. And it's similar for the provisions under the natural resources article as well. And so amendment number 2 and 3 is intended to clarify that the partnerships between the state and the private sector, carbon offset market organizations, are furthering the state's greenhouse gas reduction goals.
Okay, Delegate Stewart.
I just don't really understand what they're worried about. Does anyone understand why NAIOP put this in?
I don't. Is anyone from NAIOP on the call? Okay.
I know MDE. I have some comments on them. I'm not sure if Tyler would like to share now, but it might help, understand what the goal was and how MDE thinks that this isn't really necessary.
You mind if I
Sure,
explain?
Tyler, why don't you jump in? And then Delegate Boyce, I think you had a question as well.
So our concern with this language would be that this would require us to take out-of-state reductions into account in Maryland's greenhouse gas reduction inventory. And so currently the EPA accounting standards allows you to only count those practices that lead to reductions within, the confines of your state. And with this language added in, we believe that this would, require us, if a project, expanded state boundaries and it was a Pennsylvania and Maryland project funded by Maryland, that we would have to take those reductions into account.
Okay. So you say that you're concerned that adding this language would require Maryland to take into account the greenhouse gas reductions achieved if the funder of the carbon credits was out of state.
So if the project occurred out of state, and so we only can account for projects that deliver reductions in Maryland in our greenhouse gas reduction inventory.
Gotcha. Okay. Delegate Boyce, did you have a question? I think I saw your hand before.
I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm trying to push mute and I've been raising my hand. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Okay, any other questions about the NIA proposals?
I do have one now that I think about one question. So there's a part of the bill that manages our authority as it relates to our regional approach to with Pennsylvania. Let me find it so I'm not making up stories. Hold on, let me think about that one a little bit more.
Okay, you want us to come back to you on that? Okay. Any further questions about the NIA proposals? Yeah, and again, folks can just jump in, no need to raise your hand. Okay, we will. DNR proposals.
Will we be able to vote these amendments separately?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, so after we've gone through all of them, then I'll start at the top again and ask, if anyone wants to move, each particular amendment.
So for DNR's amendments, the first amendment relates to the timing and for the use of the 2010 trust fund to procure environmental outcomes. Under the bill, funds from the trust fund may not be used to procure environmental outcomes achieved before January 1st, 2021. And DNR would propose to delay this implementation date to July 1, 2022. Do we just do all of them unless there's questions?
Sure.
Okay, the next one relates to BASTAT program scientific advisory panel's cost-effective analysis of the 2010 trust fund distributions. This would delay the reporting date from 2023 to 2024. And then the final amendment is intended to address the cost and timing of the digital tool study. The bill requires DNR in consultation with the BASTAT subcabinet agencies and appropriate experts using funding received through state or federal grant programs to study and assess the potential for digital tools and platforms to contribute to bay restoration climate solutions. And so DNR is unaware of any available funding, so they propose that the study is conditioned on available funding, and then they would delay the reporting date by 1 year. And the reasoning was to allow for sufficient time after the federal digital tool studies is released, and then give time for the department to identify potential funding sources. So that report, I believe, is due to be released. I made a note of it. I think it might be November of, I don't know, 2022 or 2023. I'd have to look for that date for the federal study.
Kristen, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Not to be petty, but were any of these departmental amendments added to the Senate version of this bill?
Is the Senate version of the bill moving yet? I'm not aware of amendments being adopted in the Senate yet. I have to do that.
Mr. Chair, I could help answer. This is John Griffin.
Sure.
That was duly referred to Budget and Tax and EHE. And both committees have reported the bill out favorably.
Without amendment.
But they did not include some of these amendments.
Okay.
So John, I'm sorry.
No, I just.
Yeah, so you're saying in particular, these DNR amendments, were they not included?
They didn't consider them.
Didn't consider them, okay.
No.
Delegate Boyce is the co-sponsor of the bill. Not to put you on the spot, but do you have any feedback about these?
I want to respect the departments and as it relates to the success of the framework of this, Conservation Finance Act. But I just question, I just wanted to make sure that they were at least submitted on the other side. If the Senate didn't consider them, that's one thing, that's fair, but I just didn't know whether or not they were just not submitted. So it sounds like they were, but they did not consider them. Is that,
Okay.
Would that be correct, John?
Yes, Delegate Boyce, that is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I see now that they have, it's I guess on their report for today. I didn't see that, and I haven't seen their amendments, but.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about the DNR proposals? All right, let's move on. Chesapeake Watershed Restoration Professionals. Okay, let's see. Well, I'll scroll up once we can. Kristen, if you could discuss one, then we'll move to number 2.
Yeah, they're basically adding a catch-all throughout the bill. This any other ecosystem services approved by the department. The purpose is that this would allow best management practices and ecosystem services evolve. The responsible department has the discretion to approve new methods without going to the legislature for approval. Although I would say that, for legal purposes, the language, the definitions provided in the bill aren't prescriptive. When language like includes is being used, it's not excluding practices. So just something to think about there, that nothing precludes the departments from identifying other types of projects that fit the spirit of the definition.
Right, so I guess what you're saying, Kristen, is this would add sort of a catch-all to definitions, be it blue infrastructure or
Green infrastructure,
right, green infrastructure.
And ecosystem services.
Kristen, for clarity, without this, it doesn't mean that they can't either, correct?
That's correct. That's my reading. This is a list of of practices to illustrate what can be used, but it's not prohibiting.
Are there any representatives from this organization on the call? I've never heard of them before.
Yeah, I'd be interested as well, because it seems like professionals telling professionals essentially how to do their job.
I've just never heard of, I mean, has anyone ever heard of the organization? Am I just in the dark?
Yes, Delegate Stewart, if I may, Mr. Chair, and Tim, please hop. This is a fairly new organization, and some of us had the chance to speak to them after the Senate hearing when they proposed these amendments, pointing out to them, as Kristen just did, that a lot of these can be handled administratively, you know, when the bill is implemented. So maybe they didn't do it officially, but unofficially said, well, just don't worry about these amendments then. So I can't say that they put that in writing, but that's what we were told.
I believe they're represented by Isaac over at Compass Relations Firm.
Yes, I think that's correct. Chris.
Great, that's all very helpful.
Yeah, and my 2 cents on this issue is that I remember, the specific definitions of, green infrastructure, blue infrastructure, et cetera, were, the process of, multiple stakeholders getting together. And while I agree that I don't think the bill precludes the language, it's just, I don't know, sort of amending these definitions at this relatively late stage, to me, I'd have a question about it, but okay, well, why don't we, any other questions before we move on to the second amendment? All right. And third amendment, oh, there's more. Okay. Okay, amendment number 2.
So this relates to the definition of environmental outcome. They would, right now, that would include a nutrient or a carbon benefit, and they indicated that they would like to include sediment. I think, again, I'm not sure it's necessary. I know a lot of nutrient practices, like for phosphorus, also involve sediment reductions too. So I'm not real sure if that would be excluded either under the bill.
Tyler, did you have thoughts on this?
I don't think it's excluded under the bill. Yeah, I didn't have any issues with the amendment.
Yeah, I mean,
I
again,
think it's similar to the other things.
so the definition of environmental outcome says means a commodity that is modeled or directly measured as a single quantifiable and certified unit of improvement to the environment. And then we have language after that that says including a nutrient or carbon benefit. Again, including doesn't exclude other types of improvements to the environment.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, I guess, Kristen, reducing sediment is a quantifiable improvement to the environment, right? So, right, just to your point that it's not excluded. It's good, easily come into the definition.
Right.
And just so you know, our typical quantifiable benefits are like nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment.
All right.
Okay. All right. Amendment number 3.
Mr. Chair, I think
sorry.
Tim has a question.
Okay, Tim.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm pretty certain, as John mentioned, that the association had backed away from offering these amendments. We had a number of conversations with them, including their board members, and they expressed, at least to us, that they understood that a lot of this could be accomplished through regulation. I believe that's why after proposing it initially on the Senate side, they were never subsequently considered or raised on the Senate side. So I think that was my best recollection of where we were in the process.
So
And Mr. Chair, I was just going to offer that if you want just to table this part of the discussion, I'll reach out to Isaac after the meeting just to ensure or do you want to
Kristen, I'd like to actually
go through
go go through all just decide what tonight, which amendments we're going to approve.
Oh, completely understand. And that's what's submitted here. And this is what we have. So of course.
Yeah. So I guess given what Tim and John have said, so we discussed there 1 and 2. There are 3 and 4 remaining. Does anyone, I guess I'll just put it this way, does anyone want us to discuss, even review amendments 3 or 4?
I'd like to at least hear about them.
Okay. Okay, Kristen, can you?
Yeah, I'm just turning to the page. So the next amendment relates to the definition of evaluator. And so what this is intended to do is to add guardrails to the evaluator to ensure that they have the necessary expertise to make these determinations regarding the environmental outcomes.
Let's see.
So it just further specifies what this evaluator would be. It would be a recognized expert in ecosystem services and the design, monitoring, managing of blue and green infrastructure. Yeah. And then it would add language that would be independent, impartial person or group.
Okay.
And any requirements for an evaluator, like that goes to that level of specificity, often comes out through, the administrative side, the regulatory side, that process.
Okay. Any Delegate Otto?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I was just inquiring, who's going to make that determination of these qualifications? I mean, they're pretty specific, but but they're not specific, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I guess it'd be the department.
That's selecting the members of this evaluator. Well, that's all right. Yeah.
The evaluator could be the department.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this is similar to the point that I brought up last time, and it ended up spawning the amendment that I have later that we're going to talk about. But I wonder if Tim and John have the same consternation about this amendment that they had with my proposal. My understanding is that they were somewhat concerned about having to have about a third-party evaluation being required for every project, because smaller projects, of which hopefully there are both small and large projects, for smaller projects it might be either cost prohibited or sort of overkill to have an evaluation, and that's why we've instead gone with like a triennial evaluation from MES with my amendment. But I wonder if they have the same issue here with this amendment, which does not specify third party. In other words, it says that the expert has to be a legitimate expert, but it doesn't actually say they have to be outside the department. At least that's my reading. In other words, as long as there's someone at MES or at MDE who's an expert in ecosystem services, et cetera, then that person seems like they would satisfy amendment number 3 if we adopted it. But I just wanted to hear from John or Tim to see if I'm wrong about that.
Mr. Chair, this is Tim.
Sure.
I think that's correct, Delegate Stewart. We'd have the same concerns. In addition, as Delegate Otto mentioned, this is a pretty specific list of criteria. So the person would have to be expert in design, monitoring, and management. Those 3 are often not in one person. Like many, including state employees, are expert in evaluation, but not necessarily in design. So it's a pretty narrow subset.
What if we just did an independent and impartial person or group?
Mr. Chair,
Sure.
this is John again. Delegate Stewart, if I might. I don't know if you noticed Delegate Boyce's chat notice. She just spoke with the lobbyist for this association.
Yeah, I do. I appreciate Delegate Boyce following up on that, but I guess since we're talking about them. If someone
Yeah, we
wants
can still discuss, absolutely.
we can still discuss if someone really likes what they propose, even if it's not being moved by the group anymore, we can still discuss them.
Well, as Delegate Stewart was alluding to, I think the amendment that we worked with him on is sufficient. I don't think we need to do all this. It's going to be, as Tim said, complicated to find one person who has all this expertise. And we don't think it's necessary at all, particularly given Delegate Stewart's amendment.
Yeah, that makes sense to me in terms of the expertise thing, but do y'all also have the same view about saying that the person needs to be independent and impartial, or do you think that would necessitate a third party being hired outside the department?
Probably would require that, I would think. Tim, don't you?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I guess the language independent. Probably,
Independent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I mean, obviously, in theory, independent and impartial sounds like kind of a no-brainer amendment, which is why I find it attractive. But I will heed the resistance here and fall back on my own amendment.
Okay. All right. Amendment number 4.
This amendment adds a definition relating to qualification-based selection in environmental engineering projects. I mean, it's adding a definition. I think it's maybe was initially intended to perhaps be more substantive, because I don't think we use that term in the bill. So anyway, would just to have this qualification-based selection in these environmental engineering projects, so that I guess they're getting, experience with folks who deal with these types of projects.
So,
Okay. Yeah, Delegate Ruth.
I actually like this. I mean, I do worry about, that a bid based on cost alone is not going to have the, necessarily the best, organization or people to do the job. But I'd be interested in hearing John and Tim, what you have to say about this.
Thank you, Delegate Ruth. We pointed out in our conversations with them that just about every contract under the various types of contracts that state agencies can execute, there is always a provision just about universally to ask them for qualifications that meet certain standards. And those are reviewed first. And if they're not meeting those, then they get pushed away. They're off the table. So we already have that. And certainly it would exist with these pay for success procurements. Any agency is going to want to know what are the qualifications of the companies who submit proposals. So it's really not based just on cost. And
if I could just add, John, the concern was as well that given the language around qualifications is pervasive in state procurement policy, what would it mean to duplicate it here? And I guess partly I was thinking about new entities, new businesses, farmers. Would this in some way make it harder to think about, new small businesses to be able to compete for these contracts? So I was just worried about the basically repeating it twice, meaning that it was supposed to be emphasized, but by in some additional way beyond what's in all other contracts.
So in general, these types of contracts already require some type of qualification.
yes.
Tyler, is there anything you can add to that?
I would add that we do have the ability to take into account some of these, qualifications and track records when we're issuing procurements.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Boyce.
I want to be respectfully honest. It feels like we're trying to create the contract right now, right? A lot of this stuff I feel like is you bid for a project, you get the project, and then you start negotiating about what your contract looks like, what people are going to do, where's the skill coming from, what's your resume, will you hire locally? Like all of those things are, I think, beyond the scope of this general bill that is just trying to create this procurement framework. So I just kind of want to put that out there to kind of think about what feels like something that is doable, but that may be something that can be done outside of legislation, if at all possible.
Okay, all right, thank you, Delegate Boyce. Any other questions about this amendment? All right, let's.
So the next two, we did not receive specific amendment language from the builders or from the wastewater, the Maryland Association of Municipal Wastewater Agencies. I included some of their remarks in their testimony just because they signed up favorable with amendments. We go through them, but it was more expressing concerns, but did not offer specific language.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my opinion is that's, we called for specific amendment language for today. If we don't have a specific amendment language, I don't see how we can consider their comments. But having said that, does anyone want Kristen to go through any of these concerns?
I think we should go through it respectfully.
Okay. Kristen, if you could start with MBIA.
So sure, the builders expressed two concerns. The first relates to the cost share program. And they asked that the cost share program provisions be revised to require reciprocal agreements with other carbon credit markets in order to track carbon offsets generated in the state and allow an equivalent amount of those credits to be purchased in the future by the regulated community in the state of Maryland.
So would this be like what we were talking about before, where people could use out-of-state credits then?
I think it relates. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same. I don't have a lot of depth when we talk about the carbon credit markets.
John, did you want to, I'm sorry.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Well, I would just say they were working in tandem with the IHOP, when we looked at earlier. And their first set of comments they were worried that somehow carbon offset credits in Maryland would be exhausted. So when they would have to comply as companies with the greenhouse gas requirements, there'd be none left in the state. But that's not the way these markets work. I mean, they're national, international markets driven by multinational companies who are trying to get to net zero. And they can't do it all within their own operations, so they look to carbon offset markets on forests and farmland, among other places. So we tried to explain to them that that's not the way these carbon markets work. And they also thought that carbon offsets would be regulated under the Bay TMDL, which it's not. So I think they were, with all due respect to them, grasping for something that was sort of an illusion, not a reality.
Okay. I guess by the language of it, it would require reciprocal agreements between, say, the relevant state agency and every other carbon credit program.
Yeah, well, their earlier language would require reciprocal agreements with other states. And, we also pointed out that, any carbon reductions, I mean, the world is round, so.
Right.
That's right. So they're going to benefit. I mean, they just don't regulate these markets that way. Tim, you want to add anything?
Yeah, thank you. There's just no process to sign or no authority to issue such reciprocal agreements with another state or a country, nor is there any kind of authority to do that in other states or countries. They just as John said, the markets operate globally, and at the moment, and what the bill is referring to is voluntary credits. So these are credits that are operating really outside of government policy writ large. They're to help companies achieve what are mostly, voluntary environment, social goals that they've signed up for.
Okay. Yes, Doug.
Can I just ask
Sure.
if Tyler has anything to add? That was
Sure. And I think I'll just add that behind these concerns were that they wanted to make sure that if a credit was generated, that credit was available in the future in a regulated market for them to purchase, in which we thought, that might hamstring that might hold up those who are, participating in that market, because then that would stop them from selling them anywhere else outside of Maryland. And so I think that was like the bottom line of what they were trying. They want to make sure that every credit generated in Maryland only stayed in Maryland and could not be sold outside.
Okay. Any other question about concern number 1? All right, let's go to number 2.
And number 2, and I should add that the explanation is in the builder's words, because I thought it was important, because it does show that there might be a misinterpretation of this provision. They were nervous they were concerned that this relates to the water infrastructure assets, and that the bill would allow changes to these assets if they are determined to have an environmental benefit. And they believe that standard for removal or change would be overbroad. I added a note. 1, they refer to DNR. The water infrastructure asset provisions are under MDE's jurisdiction. And then those provisions in the bill only apply when MDE has already made a determination that that the asset is unsafe, needs repair, or should be removed under current law. So I think it might be just a misunderstanding of what those provisions seek to do.
Okay. Any questions about this item? Okay, well then let's go to the Association of Municipal Wastewater Agencies. So just one item there.
Yeah, they're concerned related to authorizing green and blue infrastructure projects to be funded under the Water Quality Revolving Loan Fund, and that they request consideration of amendment to give traditional infrastructure a funding priority over the green and blue infrastructure projects. They're concerned that less money would be available.
Okay. Tyler, can I ask you to, I'm sorry, Delegate Ruth, why don't you go ahead?
well, thank you. I think that Tyler can probably address my question, but I was just going to ask, is there any evidence that the blue and green infrastructure is less effective than traditional infrastructure? I'm not sure there's a need for this concern, but maybe Tyler can address that.
Well, I first will address that these are things that we can already fund, especially after Delegate Stein's bill passed last year, allowing for additional things to be taken into account and funded through Water Quality Revolving Loan Fund. The second question, I think they have different benefits, because one is more of the public health benefit and the other is more environmentally focused. So I don't know if I would pick one.
Okay. Sure. Any other questions about this item? All right, then the last potential amendment is Delegate Stewart's amendment on evaluation. And see, I know, Kristen, you sent that out. So let me see if I can, let's see. So find that one and share it.
That's what time I sent it.
Yeah, let's see. All right, let me just stop sharing for now.
And that was sent at 1:59.
All right, I'm gonna stop sharing. And then 159, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want me to pull it up?
No, I found it. I'm just going to put it into a Word doc real fast.
Oh, okay.
Whoops. Okay. Let's see. Share screen. I think this is it. Let's see. Yes. Okay. All right. So Kristen and Delegate Stewart, if you want to explain this.
Sure, I'll give a quick overview and then Delegate Stewart could go into more detail if needed. So the bill or the amendment would require MES to evaluate the results of all pay for success contracts that are made under the bill. The evaluation would be there in paragraph number 2, it indicates that those evaluations must address the costs of the projects, the average times to complete each project, and the results of each project in terms of meeting the success metrics established in the contract. These evaluations would be conducted every 3 years. There is, under number 4, they would require a unit that enters into a pay for success contract to execute an agreement with MES to provide for reimbursement for MES's evaluation. And then there's a reporting requirement where presumably MES would be delivering copies of the report to the relevant agency, and as well as the relevant committees in the General Assembly, E&T and EHE, B&T appropriations.
Okay.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, the only thing I would just add is that I appreciate Tim and John taking the time to chat with me and with Delegate Ruth over the weekend about some of the concerns I expressed last time with regard to having an evaluation done on projects that was, third-party evaluation, as some states have done in different contexts. The outcome of that conversation was that John and Tim, in their, infinite wisdom, much higher than mine, felt that having an independent third-party evaluation for every single project would hamstring these types of projects, because especially for smaller ones, it would be overkill, as I stated earlier. However, they agreed that there is some merit to the idea of having these periodic evaluations done by MES. And so they helped me, and by help me, I mean, they basically wrote this amendment. So, it's a delegate, quote unquote, Delegate Stewart amendment. Obviously we did it in consultation with Tim and John. And I think that, basically the idea here is that this is a relatively new type of contract. Obviously, in the state of Maryland and nationwide, this has been done in some other contexts, but in many ways, Maryland is really a groundbreaking sort of entity here. I mean, we're kind of leading the nation. And so accordingly, I felt it was important to have a periodic check-in that MES could undertake to basically just tell us how these contracts are performing. How are they doing? Are they meeting expectations? What's the comparison between traditional procurement and pay for success? And that's all it is.
Okay. Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the Delegate Stewart answered my question just now. I wondered why MES was the chosen agency, but I'm a fan of MES, and even though the recent scandals with them, but I think they do a fine job in what they do, and I think they'd be a good agency, and I'd move favorable on the amendment.
Okay, we'll get to that in a few minutes.
Right.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions about Delegate Stewart's proposed amendment?
Is this the final one? Because I feel like I've seen a couple of them. Is Is this it, or was there something else?
There may be one technical addition that Tim added or John added, but John, that's probably why John has his hand up.
Okay,
It was
John.
just the amendment that Tim put in chat that we need in subsection 5 of this new section. If you can see it
Okay,
there.
So just remember this amendment has not gone through the amendment office. So those types of technical changes, that's standard language that for reporting that would be.
Okay,
I mean, if it comes out of the amendment office without it, I would hope I would have caught that, but thank you. But that is something the amendment office will probably add
Thank you,
in their
Kristen. Sure.
finalized amendment.
sure. Thank you.
Thank you, though.
Oops, trying to get back to the document. Okay. So I guess, Kristen, you're saying we could consider this subject to sort of technical tweaking by the amendment office. Is that right?
So that is up to you, the chair, and the subcommittee's comfort level. I'm personally, as if this amendment is fine, and I look at the draft that comes back to the amendment office, and they align intent, I think that's fine to go forward if you would like to.
And I'm also happy, if there's some sort of discrepancy, I'm happy to follow up with Tim and John before we have our full committee and fix any sort of like last second discrepancies with a full committee amendment if we really need to.
Sure. Okay. All right. Well, let's since we've reviewed, Kristen, this is the universe of amendments, right?
Right. And so they're organized by who's offering them. So if you wanted to go through each, we can go, they're numbered. So however you want to do it, you can.
Well, since sometimes I have difficulty shifting from screen share, documents. Since this is up, why don't we take this one first? And then we'll start at the top of the first list. Yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry, before we start going through the list, could I just really quick say something?
Sure.
So I just wanted to, first of all, thank Tim and John for the conversation yesterday. And I also had some concerns, and we spent a lot of time talking about it. I think that, my concerns were more bigger picture, and, we sort of agreed that they didn't fit in this, in this particular contracting type, but that, I think there are things to look forward to. And I also especially wanted to thank Delegate Boyce. We chatted throughout the day today and really, worked through particularly my concern about, local hiring in underserved communities. And I think Delegate Boyce and I are going to work on some things going forward. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Delegate Ruth. And thank you to you and to Delegate Stewart for working through these issues. Pay for success is a new concept. It certainly made sense to kind of, discuss all the potential ramifications. So thank you for your efforts. Okay, so we're on Delegate Stewart's amendment right here. Delegate Otto had moved it. Is there a second?
I'll second, and also second the comments from Delegate Otto. As usual, we're on the same page.
All right. Otto amendments. Yes. All right. All those in favor of this amendment say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. You're opposed? Okay. Okay. All right. So this amendment passes, and let me stop sharing this document and go back to the full list, and we'll go through those others. Okay. Everyone see the Kristen summary? So again, what we'll do is I'll just say like amendment number 1. If anyone wants to move it, and then there's a second, we can have a vote. But we'll just go down through the list. I mean, I do think that since for those items for which we don't have amendment language now, I don't see how we can take them up. But in any case, let's go through these amendments. Amendment number 1, sponsor amendment.
Move the amendments.
Okay, and I'll second that. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, amendment number 2, the sponsor amendments.
Move the amendments.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that amendment passes as well. Okay, NIOP proposals.
Move
Amendment
un-
number 1.
do we move unfavorable for amendments? Is that allowed?
Second.
Sure. Okay. All those in favor of the unfavorable, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, amendment fails. Number 2.
Move unfavorable.
Second.
All those in favor of the unfavorable, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay, amendment fails. Number 3.
Move favorable. I mean, move unfavorable, sorry.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of the unfavorable, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, amendment fails. All right, whoops. Okay, NIA proposals, DNR proposals. Amendment number 1. Is there a motion in favor? Okay, hearing none, that amendment fails. Number 2. Is there a motion in favor? Hearing none, that amendment fails. Number 3. Any favorable motion? Okay, hearing none, that amendment fails as well. All right. Even though these amendments are technically withdrawn by the professionals since we reviewed them, let's go through them. Amendment number 1. Is there a motion in favor?
Move unfavorable.
Unfavorable? Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of the unfavorable motion on number 1, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, amendment fails. Number 2, let me just move the. Okay, amendment number 2.
Move unfavorable.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of the unfavorable, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, number 2 fails. Amendment number 3. Any favorable or unfavorable motion?
Now, who sponsored these amendments?
This is a group called the Chesapeake Watershed Restoration Professionals. I don't know about them. John, can you shed any light on who they are, who they represent?
I think there are a number of professionals in the environmental restoration, broadly speaking,
Okay.
arena, and I don't think they've been in existence for any longer than a year, maybe a year and a half. So they're, by their own admission, they're sort of getting their sea legs, and
Okay.
so that's about all I know, unless Tim has.
All right. Thank you,
something.
John.
You're welcome, Charles. Excuse me,
Move
Delegate.
unfavorable.
Move unfavorable. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of the unfavorable motion for number 3, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, amendment fails. Amendment number 4.
Move unfavorable, Mr. Chair.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of the unfavorable say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, amendment fails. Now, as I said at the outset of our amendment voting, that I didn't think without specific amendment language, we could consider these.
Yeah.
Is there anyone who, I'll put it this way, the majority of the subcommittee disagreed, wanted to come up with language on the spot. I wouldn't stand in their way, but is everyone okay with this? Not considering these, because these are concerns, not amendments.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Okay. All right, then we are, oh no, we have the amendments. We passed several amendments. So we have before us the bill as amended. Is there a motion?
Here's the bill.
Move the bill. Second.
All right, okay. Any last debate on the bill as amended?
Wait a minute, quick question. Did we do the Maryland Association of Municipal Water Agencies amendment?
I sort of lumped that into with MBIA.
Oh, sorry. Okay, fair enough.
That's okay.
Sorry.
So what was their concern?
The municipal wastewater agencies.
Yeah.
Kristen, could I ask you to
They were
summarize what their
by
concern is?
authorizing the use of the blue and green infrastructure practices under the Water Quality Revolving Loan Fund would make less money available for to address the ongoing needs of the state wastewater plants. And then
Okay. Yeah.
Tyler MDE further explained that this is already allowed. This is just adding more specificity into the language of the bill.
Thank you. That makes me feel a lot more comfortable, really. Truly.
Okay.
I'm not.
No, perfectly fine question. Any other questions or discussion about the bill as amended? All right, all those in favor of the bill as amended, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, great. Bill as amended passes. Thank you, everyone, the co-sponsor, all the subcommittee members for your time on this. There's a reason why this bill was initially called the Comprehensive Conservation Finance Act, because it is comprehensive, but I appreciate everyone's work as well as the advocates. Okay, so, excuse me, what's the will of the subcommittee? I said we knock off at 5:30, no later than 5:30. We could start discussion of HB 700, or we could just take that up at the next meeting, which is Wednesday. What would folks like to
10
do?
minutes.
What's that?
We've got 10 minutes until 5:30.
Okay. All right, that's fine. So Kristen and I will stop screen sharing.
Grab my papers. So we have House Bill 700, Environment Products and Packaging, Labeling, Marketing, and Advertising for Recycling. Do you want to go page by page to kind of talk about the bill and then also address the sponsor amendments as we go through it? Does that make sense?
Sure. Does that make sense to everyone? We'll get as far as we can. Once we hit 5:30, then we'll stop.
Okay, so
Kristen, did you sent out a marked up version of the bill? Do you want me to try?
I did. There, you should have a reprint copy of the bill with the
Okay.
sponsor.
Do you remember about when you sent that out?
That would have been sent this morning, maybe around 10. Oh, look,
10:01 a.m.
there you go.
You know what? Okay, thank you. Let me
Thank you.
find that.
On my computer, it's threaded with the others. So they came at different times, but they ended up all threaded together.
Okay. Can I ask you a question, Delegate Ruth? Are you able to find it and share it? I
Sure.
can't seem to
Oh,
find it.
I can share it here.
Okay.
Thank you, but
I don't share.
Be nice, Delegate Gilchrist.
I don't know how to.
Oh,
oops. Let's try that again. No, I do know how to share, but I sometimes I have issues with my divided attention and writing, sharing, but I can definitely bring this up. Let's see. Here we go. Actually, this will be good anyway to walk through it this way. Okay, the first part of this bill is relating to changing labeling requirements for plastic bottles and containers. I'm going to skip over the first definition first. And the term container is being amended to also include plastic bags Currently, it includes rigid plastic containers or plastic bottle. The sponsor's amendment would also add plastic bag to the definition. The amendment is also changing some of the capacity numbers for plastic bottles and rigid plastic containers, as you can see so in line 12, as it relates to plastic bottles, we're going from a capacity of 16 fluid ounces to 8. And then for rigid plastic containers, that's being changed in line 18 from 8 ounces to at least 4 ounces. I'm going to come back to the definition for chasing arrows. So on page 3, there's language specifying that a container may not display, this is at the amended version, a container may not display a chase and arrow symbol if the container is not considered recyclable under the bill. And then I'll go back, and the sponsor is including a definition of chasing arrows symbol, so it's clear, what the bill is referencing. Okay, with that.
Any questions about the definitions? For the amendments in this section?
Okay.
Okay.
So the bill is establishing a new subtitle relating to the labeling, marketing, and advertising of products and packaging for recycling. We can go back to the definitions, or we can go over them first. There's just a series of relevant definitions. Maybe when we talk about the substantive provisions, if anybody has a question of what a term means or whether it's defined, we can go back to this, or we can go through it, whichever. Let's go to. Okay, in line 14, we're establishing the policy of the state relating to environmental marketing claims, relating to recyclability of products, and then finally really like a transparency and ensuring accurate and useful information relating to the proper disposal of products and packaging. The bill is prohibiting a person from making an explicit or implied, untruthful, deceptive, or misleading environmental marketing claim. There's language that indicates that it is a defense to an action under the bill that the person's environmental marketing claim conforms to the standards or are consistent with the examples contained in the Federal Trade Commission's guides for the use of environmental marketing claims. That defense would not apply to a claim for a violation regarding recyclability or labeling, I believe. So it wouldn't apply to, the provisions being established under the bill relating to labeling and recyclability claims. Let's see. So a person may not sell, distribute, import any product or packaging labeled with or depicting an untruthful, deceptive, or misleading environmental marketing claim regarding the recyclability of the product or packaging. Under subsection C, it establishes that a product or packaging displaying a recycling symbol or statement indicating the product or packaging is recyclable or directing the consumer to recycle the product or packaging as is an untruthful, deceptive, or misleading claim unless the product is considered recyclable under the standards established in the bill. We'll get to those in a minute. There is amendment language, or actually it's not language, it's a striking language from the bill. I do know that there was concern that I think there was concern that it would open the door to codifying chemical recycling. So I'm not really sure if it does, but the sponsor wanted to take that provision out of the bill. Under subsection D, relates to products or packaging, including multiple types of materials. A recycling symbol or statement indicating recyclability is allowed, but only if there is, so let me read that more slow. If the recycling symbol or statement makes clear in the same or larger font or symbol size that the other components of the product or packaging are not recyclable. So I think I skipped over. So they can display this recycling symbol or statement on external packaging that's considered recyclable, so long as they're making it clear that the other components of the product or packaging are not recyclable. So starting at the bottom here in lines 32, 33, and going on to page 7 is listing certain labeling activities that would not be considered untruthful, deceptive, or misleading under the bill. Okay, in line 10, we're adding a new section that's establishing recyclability standards. So these are the standards. In order to be considered recycled, the product or packaging would have to meet these standards established here. I don't know if you want me to read them. If you want to read them, I always know everybody can read.
Yeah, since I think we're right at 5:30, why don't
I'll
you
get to that last.
break it
And
down?
so there's one amendment in this section that's taking out language relating to the standards, relating to the recyclability standards. The standards here are relating to a percentage of the product or packaging being sorted and aggregated in the state that is required, that would be recycled into new products or packaging. So that way we can finish that section.
Okay,
Can I ask one clarifying question, Mr. Chair, please?
sure.
So when it says that, as well as the top before, so this would include mechanical recycling? I know you made a statement about
Mechanical recycling, I'm not sure what you mean by, are you talking about chemical recycling? When I made the statement, there was a provision here that
yeah,
would
you mentioned that, but I'm wondering, would that not allow mechanical recycling? Maybe.
I guess I'm not clear on the question. When you say mechanical recycling, I'm not understanding.
Okay, hold on. Let me go back to the, I can't see your bill, so I have it up at the same time. So
Okay.
it said, I believe it was page 6, that removed composed of a material that routinely becomes feedstock for the production of new products or packaging. You mentioned chemical recycling, but isn't that the same, somewhat of the same definition of mechanical recycling? Where they kind of create pellets for new materials, or no?
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, okay.
Do you want me to?
Delegate, yeah, I mean, Tower, can you weigh in?
Sure. So chemical recycling would be when it breaks it down to a molecular level, and then you really can't tell which plastic is what after that because it's all just molecules. And then mechanical, you're talking about grinding things up and then maybe turning milk cartons into benches.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I don't have the answer to your question, though. I only know how to define those processes.
Yeah,
All right,
further than I did.
Well, maybe that's a good place to wrap up for now, and then Tower, if you could look into that, and
certainly
we can pick up on Wednesday. So, okay. Thanks, everyone. We'll meet again Wednesday after bill hearings. So have a good night. See you on the floor.